Good morning, West USA. Welcome to another edition of our Monday morning webinar. All foggy today.
Oh, yes.
Oh man, I walked outside. I'm like, dang, I either got transplanted back to Southern California or I died and went to heaven. and I think the former, I got better odds at the former. But anyways, appreciate everybody joining us today. Hopefully you get your fireplace going and you're making calls. All right, a little sneak peek of what we got coming up on tap today. I tell you, Nick. All right. We got Todd's look at the numbers. We got Matt Baker here with the Bookspan Baker team going to give us our mortgage minute. And I'm just going to talk about three things that I am focusing on this month to ensure that I'm busy for 2023.
Smart.
And we are so lucky we have Duane Fouts. 9 years we've been doing this, Nick. We've never had anyone at 8 o'clock the night before call in sick.
That's correct. We haven't. It's the first for everything, my friend.
First for everything. So we appreciate that Duane stopping by and filling in. So I literally have no idea what he's got on tap today, so it'll be good. So all my answers are yes. So
no, you're supposed to say when it's legal. Maybe it depends.
Would you stop messing with everything, Nick? You're killing me here. All right. Anyways, okay.
You're back.
All right. If you got any comments or questions, please feel free to email us at webinar@westusa.com. And apologies for last week. We were off last week. And we obviously, a couple of you logged on, so we appreciate though you were really, going all out for us. All right, some announcements. We've got quite a few announcements real quick. This afternoon or this morning at 10:30, we are doing the last agent orientation of the year. So if you are new to West USA or you've never attended an agent orientation, that is going on this morning at 10:30. It'll be all Zoom or online, I should say. And as always, all of these events, you just go to your dashboard, go onto the calendar, and you can sign up for any of these. Not too late to get that done for this morning. All right, our own Michael DeVille, this coming up Tuesday, a little 2023 market forecast. It's going to be a really good one.
It's going to be awesome.
Understand what we are expecting to come in 2023. So that is going to be at the Scottsdale office. Our Christmas celebration and potluck, this is for the Goodyear office. This is coming up Tuesday at 10 to 5.
Ooh. Wow.
I could go and eat like 3 times.
Is this a CE class hours or what? What do you get? What category do you get?
Well, I don't know.
That's
a lot of potlucking, but it is also your ugly sweater contest and all kinds of stuff going on. So that is going on tomorrow, starting at 10 a.m. at the Goodyear office. All right, our vision board workshop. All right, that is coming up Tuesday from 1 to 3 in the Mesa office as well. All right, we have the last surprise office meeting of 2022 is coming up this Tuesday from 10 to 11:30. So pretty much plan on doing no business tomorrow. You got a lot of things to do. But that is we got Patrick Duffy from the Surprise District 3 City Council member. Good idea. This is always a great opportunity to hear from our government officials.
And Patrick's awesome. Every time he goes out to Surprise, he does a really good job. So if you've not had an opportunity to hear him talk about the Surprise area, it's a great opportunity.
And I would say this, if you own properties, you're working with people that are buying or selling properties in Surprise, I would highly encourage you to attend this as well.
And, Mike, we're always talking about giving people reasons and information to help people communicate with them. If you go there and you listen to that, your conversation with your client's going to be totally different than any other agents.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Todd's next CE class is coming up this Wednesday, 3 hours of agency law. I keep getting those emails from the Department of Real Estate, so apparently I'm a little behind on my CE hours. So don't look at me. Don't look at me, Duane. I will get them done.
And I can breathe easy.
All right, so this Wednesday we got a special class coming up here at the North Phoenix office for agents in the morning. This is my lovely bride who's just released a new book, Power of Scarcity. So if you're struggling finding buyers and sellers and struggling with business, this is going to be a completely different way of marketing yourself and looking at things. So there is the link there. So get signed up for that as well. All right, photos with Santa. So that is coming up in the Chandler office, I believe. Yep. This Wednesday, December 7th from 5 to 7 p.m. Invite your clients, invite your friends, invite your family. Great opportunity to get pictures with Santa. A lot of great stuff.
There's also a unicorn. There's all kinds of crazy stuff that happens. So this was the Chandler event last year. That was one of the bigger events the Chandler office has done. They got a lot of neighborhood feedback and people participated. So if you're in the Southeast Valley, come on and hang out. I'll be down there. they'll be ringing the bell before, and then we'll be doing the event that night.
Well, yeah, and so I know you and Brock switch every year. Who's the head of the unicorn and who's the tail? And which one are you this year, bro? All right, so that's
no comment.
That's this Wednesday.
We just went to TVMA.
Yeah, Brock's not on here today.
So. All right, so our virtual class coming up on Transaction Desk. That is coming up. There's the link there. But again, you can just go to your dashboard, go to the West USA calendar, and get signed up for any of these events. But that is coming up this Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. So you can take this class in the confines of your own home. All right, we got a packing party and donations event, Women for Women, coming up December 7th from 12 to 1 at the Surprise office. So you want to make sure that you bring your donation. They are listed on the screen. I don't feel comfortable mentioning them, but they are there, and you can scan that real quick.
What are you, 12?
Yes. Have we met? My wife keeps telling me that I'm 12. So anyways, that is coming up this week, December 7th from 12 to 1 at the Surprise office.
Cause.
All right, and then our what's office is this? Our crazy sweater and holiday potluck party for the Ahwatukee office with guest speaker Dean Becker. Hopefully he's gonna be dressing up as Santa this year. He's gonna talk about what's making his phone ring. So that's coming up this Thursday, December 8th, from 10:30 to 11:30. So RSVP with Donna.
I love when Todd has a fun comment in his brain.
Oh no. Well, I was just gonna go down the naughty and nice thing,
right.
but we'll let it go.
I don't know how many things I rope our brokers into doing that they don't really want to do.
Listen, Dean's embodied Santa. He is Santa at this point.
All right, and I am excited about this Saturday. We have our West USA Christmas party. Ooh. So if you've been holding off buying your tickets, there's a few left. Join us this Saturday. It's going to be an amazing event, and it's part of our West USA Cares annual casino night as well. So that is going on this Saturday evening. Where's it at? It's never on this flyer.
Yeah, we got to get you a better flyer. Well, today is the last day, so I guess it doesn't matter.
Today is the last flyer that I go over with.
So we're doing it at the downtown Sheraton again. There are hotel rooms available still, so if you haven't gotten a room yet, you can do that. If you haven't gotten your tickets yet, there are still a few tickets available. Auction items should be going live today or tomorrow. The baskets that the office has put together with the agents are amazing. Stellar. Yes. Super excited about that. The food, the dinner, everything last year was phenomenal. We have a lot of fun at this event. So if you find yourself available this Saturday, come on down and join us.
So you said rooms. They have to go through Jill?
Yeah, so when you scan that link, you'll be able to get tickets, get rooms. If you have any questions, you can reach out to your office manager and they can help you out. But yeah, it's going to be a fantastic day.
Yeah, and if you need a ride there, Clint will be riding around in the West USA bus. So reach out to him and maybe he'll come by and grab you.
Didn't know we had a bus. It starts at 4:30. It's also not on there. So registration's at 4:30, but you can come anytime. Dinner is served at 6. So feel free to come join us.
All right, Todd, what do we got, buddy?
Well, we're trying to be a little more festive on the screen. Thank you, Haley, for the slides and the updates. She did a great job for Thanksgiving. And again, another one. She knocked it out of the park for December. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Today, we're going over the Greater Phoenix Metropolitan Market statistics for the week ending December 5th and the week prior. 61 days closed on market, 5.36 months supply. That's not an error. 18.64 absorption rate. Our list prices are averaging $684,000, and the sale prices during this past week averaged $530,000. I'm saying that a little different now, so people don't think that there's an appreciation value there. 96.53 is the list price to sale price retention, which has dropped quite a bit. Our inventory, this is the biggest concern, and I'm alerting us months ahead of this. We did have a little increase in our new listings taken this week, but not enough to replenish what we're losing. So we're under 20,000 for the third week in a row. 19,332 listings, 3,269 pending. That's part of it. It's nice to see that out of the 2s and back up into the 3,000, even though we're still 3,000 is still historically low. Closed units are at 465 for the month. If you remember, we are doing the month end November separately now. That will come out and look at your office Facebook group. groups, and you'll see those later today. New listings, 1,254 taken this past week. Average market for days on market active is at 99.3. And our closed days on market, that's not an error either, 61. We're looking for that 61 to get into the 70-day range. That's really one of the key indicators that of our stable real estate market here in the Greater Phoenix metro market. Looking at the price ranges, we're sitting at 58%. Again, thank you. Continuing every little bit to ebb and flow and increase. So 58% of the entire MLS inventory is under 500,000. 500 to a million is sitting at 31%, and 1 million and up is sitting at 10.5%. So we're looking at our spreadsheet, which kind of makes us an expert in a way, because it gives us an opportunity to compare numbers week over week, month over month, and year over year. In the very center column, we have our same week in 2019. Just to the left of that, we have the same week last year. We're still holding on to that 2019 because it was a pre-COVID year. We are out of COVID, so it is still the last oldest records that we have prior to the COVID market. So 1,254 this past week is a lot better than 1,056. But if you see in the goldenrod and the salmon color, we listed as many as 1,883 last year. So as a recovery, I'm saying this is a low number at this point, even though I've got it marked green because it is better than last week. Looking at our active inventory, we're at 19,332. We were at 19,900 last week. Yes, sliding your eyes to the right, it looks like we got a ton of inventory if you look at last year and 3 years ago. However, we're consuming that inventory way too quickly. 353 of those are coming soon. 15,917 are single-family detached. The builders contribute with 2,543, down just a wee bit. Non-distressed properties, probably non-disclosed too. Non-distressed properties out there, 19,282, representing way over to the left, 99.7% of the entire MLS inventory, which basically means, again, just for you, Chicken Little, the sky is falling. We're going into a big, huge recession, and our prices are going to drop, and people are going to go to foreclosure. That's not happening. So again, this is reflective of that. Looking at pending, this is the biggest jump week over week, is 3269. We came up from 2822. Slide your eyes way over to the right. We're at 3,400 in October, 3,800 in September. So we were at 9,000 last year. So just to give you a little bit of a perspective on how that's changed. Close inventory way too early in the month, so we're not going to go down that road. Month supply at 5.36, and that was a huge jump. But again, understand that's because we went from 2,800 average pending to 3,269 average pending, increasing about 450 units. Well, you know what? That's about what the drop was. So again, that's stable. However, we want to see that closer to 2.5 to 3 months supply. Average list price is at 684. Average sale price this past week at 530,000. We're looking at the days on market for sold creeping up. We're at 61. Again, sliding your eyes to the left, we want to get to 70. That's the magic number. All those numbers on the left, if all those numbers align, we are in one super real estate market. Looking at list price to sale price retention, dropping a little bit too much, but that's because sellers are pulling out all the stops to get rid of their property at this particular point, get rid of their property, sell their property so they can move. So it's showing up in the fact that they're giving greater discounts. So that's the numbers for this past week. Mike, if you guys, again, remember the month-end statistic numbers are going to be coming. Look at your Facebook groups. Those will be out shortly.
All right, Todd, appreciate it as
Thanks.
always, and look forward to seeing those this afternoon. All right, we're going to bring in Matt Baker into the conversation, maybe.
Yeah, maybe we have multiple slides. We do. We have it in twice.
So
Thank
we're just
you.
gonna
Heather really knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, we're gonna just keep going through. So Matt, how was your weekend, bro?
Oh yeah, really good. I did a 4-day fast, water fast.
Really?
And I'm still alive. And I'm eating last night, so it was like felt really good. So I'm really excited about that. I'm full of energy now. But let's talk about interest rates, because they've actually, a good tagline. I always like to think of taglines. We're at the best rates we've had in about 6 months. So when you're out there talking to people and you're like, hey, markets, rates are higher, but hey, actually they've come back a little bit and they followed that inflation number last month that we talked so heavily about. And so, we're now in the mid 6s. I mean, you can still get rates into the fives if you want to pay a little point. So it's not all bad coming into the season, and I feel like most of us have that, like, well, I'm going to wait till next year because rates will be lower. Well, we've already talked about the cost of waiting. You have those slides from previous weeks. So I would just continue to use that and talk about, I don't think there's any better time than right now. And if you're talking about the opportunity of to go get those properties that Todd just mentioned, I mean, they're there to get. You're there. You can actually negotiate. It's the perfect time for first-time home buyers. And right now, I just checked this morning, 6.5% on the 5% non-forgivable down payment assistance. So 6.5, you get 5% non-forgivable. Hey, I mean, that was about a point better than it was just 2 weeks ago. So when you think about, kind of half full, half empty, I mean, I think we're definitely in the half full category. And let's talk about loan amount updates. Skimming, we've been teasing this for a while. I did see it's my total pet peeve is that when loan officers get on social media early and post stuff, because yes, it is 472 and change for outlying counties, but for us here in Maricopa County specifically and Pinal, Phoenix Metro, 531.50 is FHA's new max loan limit. Go down again. We got conventional, which was posted a few days earlier. Now 726,200. Just a couple of years ago, we were like 460. Yeah, that was firmly jumbo. And there is those people that still fall in that. I mean, come the first of the year, jumbo is going to update their stuff too. So there's not that sweet spot because jumbo pricing is technically better interest rate than it is on conventional, which we don't necessarily need to go into on how that is or why that is. But let's talk then. Well, what I like to always do for agents is, loan amounts are good, but what does that mean for you as an agent? What's the price I can cap out a buyer at that's looking at FHA with the minimum 3.5% down? And I mean, let's just round it off, okay? But that's the exact number. But essentially 550,000. So when you're talking to a buyer and they're like, I'm FHA, I'm like, all right, well, and I'm looking to try to get to the max, or like, well, where would an FHA buyer reach the max? Well, there's reasons of foreclosures or bankruptcies or collections or other things that why they have to go FHA. It's not just because they have bad credit or that they don't have the down payment, because you could do conventional as limited as 3% down, which is, if you think about that, up to 720, that's crazy. Yep. But from an agent perspective, the max FHA buyer, if you're taking them to $600,000 houses, well, I hope they have the 50 grand to make up the difference, because 550 is your max. And again, the down payment then on that max is 19,228, just for reference. Yep. And then, of course, we are doing our masterminds. It's the second Wednesdays of every month. So love it if you guys wanted to zoom in or join. I've got a lot of good feedback. And then always, I'm licensed in multiple states. I just spent most of my Thanksgiving holiday getting my CE hours done for the 9 states, which is like 2 hours extra here, an hour extra here. It's painful, but I am licensed in multiple states. So if you know people or have friends that are buying or looking at refinancing out of state, I can help them there. And other than that, that's it. Happy holidays.
Wow. All right. Thanks, appreciate it, Matt.
Fantastic.
Go get yourself a couple of Big Macs.
Nope, not doing that.
All right. All right. Well, then I won't be joining you for lunch.
Yeah. No.
All right. So we're going to jump into our 3-pack this morning. And so I was thinking about, I wanted just to share what the things that I'm doing in December to ensure, because I'm looking at 2023. I'm always predicting or trying to take a look at what I'm going to have going Q1, Q2, and so forth. But it does require activities right now. Absolutely. And I think I've personally exhausted most of my buyers looking to buy in 2022. Still working with a couple, but I gotta put the foot on the pedal, and I gotta keep working for 2023. So these are the things that I am personally doing in my own business. Number one is I'm taking time, Todd. I'm going through my sphere of influence, going through my CRM, going through my notes, going through recent conversations, and identifying those people that are likely to be transacting in 2023 because they need to get put towards the top of the list. So I have a list of people that I'm pretty confident, or at least it's their intended goal to transact in 2023. So I've got to put them at the top of my priority list. And these are some of the things that I'm doing is you got to make sure that these people have your mobile app, you got to make sure that they're using your mobile app. You can go into your mobile app and see who's downloaded it, who's saving searches and keeping track. Because I will share my mobile app with people, but if they haven't downloaded it, then I've got to get on them, because I got to get them on the mobile app and my website, as opposed to Realtor.com and things like that. Then through conversations, I've got a decent idea of what areas that they might be looking in. So I'm going to set them up on a search in Armless and set them up on a portal. And then what I've got to do is determine kind of where in 2023 do I think that they're going to be transacting. And I got to set up my cadence, meaning how often and what mediums am I going to use to connect with them throughout 2023 to get them to that point where now they're ready to pull the trigger.
I think that's the biggest or incorrect things that the average agents do is going in. They don't take into consideration if you received one of those drip pieces, and say there's 12 from one a month, and you were to read those all by themselves, an average consumer, is it sparking? Is it motivating? Is it educating? Is it providing them with the information that they need to be able to get firmly and get excited about getting into the game? And if it's not, then what you're sending them is irrelevant. It's a waste of time. It's your time and theirs. And they're probably not reading it. So that cadence has to be the most important thing. And if you're not familiar with setting up the cadence or the drips, then you need to reach out to Mike or reach out to your coach and get some additional information. But this is the most important thing, because January 2nd is when most people plan 2023's business. And that means that what you do today shows up 90 days from today. So that means that right now, even December 5th, you're basically talking about only income that you're now maybe going to get the 1st of March. So you've already kind of wasted January and February, unless somebody just comes up and goes, hey, knock on your forehead, Mike, I want to buy a house today.
Well, and I would also say, the drips and the newsletters and those automated things are important. But if you're transacting in 2023, this is a matter of picking up the phone or sending direct text messages or video texts, because these are the people that I need to move the needle on, and just drips aren't going to do it. It's knowing, if I know someone's probably looking at March and February, I know when I pick up the phone in January and I pick up the phone in February what we're going to talk about. Exactly. But also just leverage the holidays, just to also just pick up the phone and just wish them Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever it is that they celebrate. I'm pretty big into video text messages, so I'll just shoot a quick 30-second video on my phone, and text it to them.
Real quick, Mikey, the one point you made that I think is really important is identifying who is likely to be transacting in 2023. As Todd mentioned, if you're looking at your past business or looking at 2022 and you don't necessarily know who might be transacting, what of your sphere of influence falls into those categories, I would highly recommend you talk to a coach, talk to a team leader, because these individuals can work with you on what does that look like for your business.
And fill in the holes.
100%.
Yeah.
All right. So kind of to Nick's point. Now what I'm going to do is I've got those top ones that I think that I'm going to transact in 2023. Well, take the time again to go through your sphere of influence, to go through your CRM. And what I mean, sometimes what I do going through my sphere of influence, sometimes I'll just sit there and start going through all the contacts in my phone.
Yep.
And I'm like, whoa, this person somehow fell through the cracks or whatever the case is. But I'm going to identify just my next top 100. And I'm going to schedule some time. And when I say schedule time, I'm going to time block in my calendar that I'm going to use this time to pick up the phone. And yes, I know 100 people sounds like a lot, but that's the name of the game. It's kind of what we do. And I want to pick up the phone and call them and just see how 2022 went. Have a real estate conversation with them. And I'm not meaning you necessarily have to sell them, but have that conversation of, man, 2022 was nuts when it came down to real estate. What questions do you have about real estate for 2023? So figure out who those 100 people are, whether you need to go down and get a pack of 100 index cards, from Walgreens or whatever the case is, write their names down, then write some notes down. And then, of course, take all those notes and enter it into your CRM. But for those of you, I've seen a lot of pop-by events in our offices. Well, these are the people that I'd be doing my pop buys for. And then of course, include social media, stalk them on social media. If I gonna pick up the phone and call Duane, I might go on Duane's Facebook page and just kind of see what he's up to, and maybe have something to discuss with him and so forth.
Well, certainly that's the benefit of social media, is it tells you more about hobbies, interests, and what people are up to. So in this particular one, Connect with Your Top 100, the thing that I'm seeing here is, you mentioned consider pop buys. We think about Thanksgiving, we think about bringing the pie by, but holidays, Christmas pie by. But Christmas, or I should say those holidays that are celebrated during the month of December, in that particular regard, people are into giving. They're looking for outlets to make their heart whole, to feel that they've contributed to somebody else. Mike, we're always talking about using cause marketing, so there's a lot of things that are going on in December. A great way to engage your client and really get to that pop by opportunity is by calling people, leaving a message saying, if you can't get a hold of them, leave the message this time. Normally we're telling you don't leave messages, but leave a message and say, there's a charitable cause that I'm involved in and we're doing this, and here's what it is. And I'd love to see if you'd like to participate. If you would, I'd be honored if you'd allow me to pop by and pick up any of those donations. Here's some of the things. Here's a copy of a flyer, so that you want to make it valid. You don't want people thinking you're trying to have your kids Christmas gifts provided by all your clients, but make it valid.
Yeah, and if you're looking for a simple pop by, just go down to Walmart and clear them out of candy canes.
Yeah, there you go.
Just get a box of candy canes for $1.50, the best $200 you ever spent.
Yeah.
And just swing by. And I think, I don't know, I'm going to test this out, but I've got a kid that's 16, got a car and a driver's license.
100%. Oh. And I mean, leverage some of the events that the company is already putting on. Your office staff is doing a really good job of doing big events. The Chandler one specifically I can think of right now. That's an amazing event to invite your clients to. And to Todd's point, we are collecting toys for toy drives right now. We've partnered with Camelback Movers. So Western USA was on the news a couple of days ago. You can leverage that for your clients, that top 100, invite them to come down. If they're not able to make it, like Todd said, stop by the house, say hi, pick up the toy, and then bring it on their behalf and make it a bigger deal.
Yeah, and if you have your kids stop by and do this, have them dress crummy. So that they show up and they're like, Daddy needs to make more money. Look how he's dressing me these days.
Please, sir, can I have some more?
Oh boy! All right, and then I think the most important one is revisit goals, business plan, and your coach. Look over. This is the time to take a look at all the goals that you set for 2021. You should have been looking at them quarterly at the very minimum, but for some of us, we were very, very busy. I didn't really have a lot of time to revisit my goals because we were just nonstop. Great problem to have. But 2023 doesn't look as busy. So this is the time to take a look at your 2022 goals. What goals did you set for yourself? Where are you at in achieving those goals? And then it's going to be time then to make adjustments to those goals, make adjustments to your business plan. And if you have a coach, do this with your coach. Have your coach sit down with your coach and go over your goals, go over that business plan. Have your coach help you make those adjustments. If you don't have a coach, and 2023 doesn't look as good as 2022, it might be time to reach out to Stu Fluke and get yourself a coach.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's not a lot to add on to that one because we did talk about it already. But let's face it. If the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland, she gets to the fork in the road. She asks the Cheshire Cat, which way should I go? The Cheshire Cat says, well, where are you headed? And she goes, well, nowhere really. And then the Cheshire Cat says, well, then I guess it doesn't matter which route you go. Well, in this particular case, that decision of which way to go at the fork in the road is for you and I as realtors is to revisit your goals. That's the whole thing here, because you need to make sure. My favorite tagline on my emails is live life on purpose. Every minute of your breath you don't get back. You never get your time back. You can't buy it back. There's nothing you can do. So you have to use it frugally and to make the greatest return possible. And if you can't do that, or if last year, 2022, you were unable to do that, let us enlighten you. Give us an opportunity to share with you some of these tools to be able to help you get where you believe you want to go.
Yeah, and Nick, I think sometimes we always say, well, we'll just kind of throw out there, reach out to Sue Fluke, look into the coaching program, or look into teams, and we just throw it out there, and it kind of goes in one ear and goes out the other for many people. But we've got an incredible coaching program, and this coaching program is specifically designed to help agents get to that next level, whatever that level looks like.
Well, and they're going to help you, kind of like Todd said, they're going to help you figure out, what does that level look like? What does success look like for you in 2023? When the markets get a little tough, we see a lot more agents decide that maybe real estate isn't for them. We don't want to see our agents decide to retire this next year. So utilize these tools. That's why we talk about this stuff at the end of the year, because when fees come due. But I mean, we just posted, I think last week, 4 of our teams ended up being, I think it was like top 20 of the best teams, maybe top 30 of the best teams across Arizona based on the Phoenix Business Journal 2021 numbers. Those aren't mistakes. We have teams and coaches inside of our company that are producing at high levels.
I thought you just handed me, you just made that up.
No, they just, Phoenix Business Journal just reached, actually they didn't even reach out.
Yeah.
We had one of our teams go, hey, did you guys know about this? Because Phoenix Business Journal doesn't like to talk to us. But we saw that, and that had nothing to do with us. That was them going out, pulling these numbers and posting that stuff. So you have the tools in front of you. So I do like that we take a pause and make it a bigger deal. Reach out to these individuals.
And, not everybody has to be a $30 million producer.
Yeah.
I mean, if your goal is to sell 10 houses this year or 5 houses this year, and you didn't do it in 2022, reach out.
I know very few top producers, or in my world, team leaders from around the country that I mastermind with. I know there's very, very, very few of us that don't have a coach, at least one coach. And I love December. I love sitting down with my coaches. It's not very much fun.
I thought I was your coach.
Because I got a whooping from this guy, You're the wind beneath my wings.
No,
There's a difference.
That's right.
He's talking about Ryan. No.
You're my inspiration, pal. All right. So that is, those are the 3 things that I would be focusing on for December. So with that, we are going to bring in Duane Fouts, as I mentioned at the beginning of the hour, or at the top of the hour. Last minute, we had our scheduled guest fall ill last night. And so Duane, I appreciate you stepping in and making the time for us. And as I'd mentioned, I have no idea what we're talking about. So
we'll just wing it, man. So,
right.
I get the text this morning about a little after 7:00 from Nick saying, hey, we need somebody to fill in for our guest who's ill this morning. And can you talk on something on real estate for a half hour? Suppose I could do that?
Maybe.
So sure, I'm happy to do that. So
don't look at me to lead this conversation, pal. I got nothing.
So there's lots of things I can talk about, but one of the things that I think is going to be very instructional, and something that came across my desk in the last week or maybe 10 days ago, something like that. And it has to do with non-refundable earnest money. So let me ask you this. Is there ever a time when non-refundable earnest money is not refundable? Or I said be refundable?
Yes.
Yeah.
Couple of them.
Yeah, I would say yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. There are. And so I'm going to go down this road of this transaction and kind of lay it out for you, and give the how an agent can inadvertently get into a situation that creates some problems for their client, right? So in this case, we had the seller, right? We were the listing broker. The property had been on the market. We're going to go back to the May, June timeframe. Market was still pretty good. We had lots of sellers were still driving the bus, for example. This offer comes in from a cooperative agent. Offer has it's a full price offer. Has a lot of favorable terms, shall we say? And I'll just read you what the buyer put into their contract on page 8. It says, buyer's earnest money to be immediately released to seller on completion of buyer's due diligence and acceptance of the buyer inspection notice by seller. Okay, you with me so far?
So far.
Yeah.
So far. We also have a buyer contingency. It says that the contract is contingent upon the buyer selling their home, right? Within a certain period of time. In this case, it was by June 6th. They had to have their home under contract. We're all familiar with the standard language for the buyer contingency, right?
Right.
So, fast forward, seller accepts the contract. There's a $5,000 earnest deposit. Earnest deposit is placed as normal with the escrow company. Okay? Still with me?
Yep.
All right. So 2 weeks go by. We're now towards the end of May. The buyer still hasn't listed their property for sale. Is that a problem?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we fix it?
They haven't listed the home.
The buyer has not listed their home. They're now still a week away from when they have to have
Well,
their home.
I would say we would first of all cure them
Okay. On what?
on the grounds that they haven't listed their home.
Where was that written in the boilerplate of the contract?
I thought that was in the contingency addendum.
Nope.
It's not there.
Oh, I thought you said it was.
Not in the contingency addendum.
The language is in the contingency addendum doesn't say anything about when the buyer has to put their home on the market. And obviously the anticipation is if this contract is accepted, buyer will immediately put their home on the market and immediately sell it, right?
Yep.
In this case, that didn't happen. They put their home on the market the last couple of days of May. So they waited about 2 weeks to do that. June 6th rolls around, which is the date on the buyer contingency. And the buyer still hasn't had a contract on their home, not even an offer. So remember the language I read to you on page 8?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It said what? The escrow company is to release the earnest money, $5,000 to
After
the
the
seller
due diligence period.
after the due diligence period.
Which has absolutely nothing to do with the
It
contingency.
has nothing to do with the contingency. So this escrow, the due diligence period during this period of time was flowing, right? The buyer accepted the property, no repairs requested. As you remember, that's how a lot of buyers were doing it back in that time frame. And so what's the escrow company do? They're going to release the earnest money to the seller, right?
Right.
What conversation do you suppose the listing agent is having with the seller about this money, this earnest money? It's non-refundable, right? You're not going to get it back. The seller's not going to have to give it back to the buyer. So fast forward, June 6th comes, buyer doesn't have their home under contract. Now what happens?
The buyer asks for their earnest money back and wants to cancel the contract.
Well, what's the buyer contingency say about the sale of a home? If the buyer doesn't have their home under contract, automatically the contract cancels, right? And escrow issues a letter saying escrow's canceled. You're free to go and sell the home to somebody else. Buyer does not make a demand for their earnest money at that time. Okay. And about, let's say about a month later, escrow gets an email from the buyer's attorney. Not just any attorney, it's one of the prominent law firms in town. And let me read this to you. And I won't give names, so I'll just use buyer and seller. Buyer has provided me with the contract and addenda to the contract. Buyer and seller entered into a standard AAR residential contract on such and such a property. Pursuant to the contract, $5,000 in earnest money was deposited with the escrow company. They also buyer and seller also entered into a buyer contingency addendum. On line 5 through 11 of the buyer contingency addendum, it is clear that the contract pursuant to which the $5,000 earnest deposit was made, it was contingent upon the buyer accepting an offer for the sale of their property located at on or before June 6, 2022. You know where we're going?
Yep.
Despite the fact that the buyer's property on such and such address was continuously listed, which, by the way, it wasn't continuously listed, for sale with a licensed real estate agent, no offers were made by prospective buyers. Since there was no offers on the property, there was no offer that could be accepted by the buyer. Since there was no offer made and thus no offer accepted, the contingency to the contract failed. Since a contingency to the contract never occurred, the contract was not enforceable. See Sam Levitt's Furniture versus Safeway from 1970. It's a lawsuit cited. Since there was an unmet contingency, the contract never became operative. None of the remedies in Section 7 of the contract could become operative because the contingency failed. There could be no breach because the contract failed. There could be no cure because there could be no breach. What do you think the chances are that most agents would have advised their client that earnest money was going to be totally non-refundable?
I think most would.
Yeah, I think most would. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I probably would, but I would have though. I mean, it's me. I would have had this conversation with you or one of your staff. You know, because anytime we go into these non-refundable things, I'm always picking up the phone and calling
you are,
guys.
Yes, and I appreciate that, but it's an easy one to overlook. You know, because you have to understand what a contingency really is, and a contingency is all about is precedent to having an enforceable contract.
Can't go forward until that contingency has been met.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so did the escrow company do the right thing by releasing the earnest money?
Well, if they followed their potential contract, however, maybe they aren't attorneys either, so
right,
they didn't read all the terms and conditions before releasing it. But
well, they had a copy of all the documents.
They could have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe should have.
So anyway.
So these so to your point here, though, you have a contingency document. That's a slap in the face because it's away from the boilerplate of the 10-page contract. However, in the 10-page contract, there's something that's also like this, not to get away from the point you're going to ultimately make, but to try to help drive it home. There's an FHA VA mandatory clause that could be on an FHA loan. So you get an FHA loan, and then that same contract says the same verbiage, or maybe not the same verbiage, but somewhere along the line it says the earnest money shall become non-refundable at the end of the inspection period, right? And so all of a sudden, but yet that FHA VA mandatory clause steps in, and that's even signed after, some could argue.
Most times.
But the point that is the earnest money would still be released back to the buyer because you can't trump a federal law.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get into that because I do think that's a whole.
We'll talk about that when we finish this one.
Yeah, because I've got some questions on that one.
Yeah. So anyway, the escrow company responds back on this and says, well, pursuant to Section 8 of the purchase contract, the escrow company is directed to immediately release the earnest money to the seller after completion of the due diligence period with the acceptance of the buyer. The buyer accepted the subject property without request of any repairs on such and such a date. The earnest money was released to the seller on such and such a date. Any demand for return of earnest money should be directed to the seller. Seller's real estate agent. Information is on page 10 of the real estate purchase contract. So this is the attorney for the escrow company replying back to the demand from the buyer's attorney. So at this point, the attorney responds back to the escrow company's attorney and says, Section 8 of the purchase contract is contingent, as was the remainder of the purchase contract, on the fulfillment of the buyer contingency addendum. Line 7 of the buyer contingency addendum states that the purchase contract was contingent upon the buyer accepting an offer to purchase her property. The contingency failed, which means the purchase contract, including Section 8, failed. It never became operative. The title company had an obligation to release the escrow funds back to the buyer. The title company had no authority to give the seller escrow money. I renew my demand that the title company send a check payable to the buyer by the end of the month. So here we got two attorneys arguing, which is common in these kind of situations, right? As to what is the proper thing. Fast forward a little farther until about September. The seller gets a process server knocking on the door.
Mm-hmm.
The buyer had decided rather than file suit over the $5,000 in justice court, they filed suit in small claims court for $3,500. That's the maximum
limit. Yeah.
That's the maximum limit. There's no attorneys involved at that point. It's just buyer and seller. As they couldn't use the alternative dispute resolution process of the contract because they were arguing that there was no contract when that contingency failed. And so they went directly to small claims court. And in this case, unfortunately, the small claims court ruled in favor of the seller and in favor of the buyer.
Okay, that's
a
big deal right there.
Yeah. It is a little bit of a deal. So they ruled in favor of the buyer, and the seller ended up having to write a check for $3,500 back to the buyer. And I can see when this all came across my desk, I could see how an agent could inadvertently get into this with that non-refundable earnest money. And we've seen the reason I wanted to talk about this is because it can happen so easy when you don't understand what those contingencies actually mean. And anytime you have those contingencies, those are things that are precedent to that contract becoming enforceable. And so how do you protect your client if you're on the seller side? You got to have that all those contingencies are deemed fulfilled and met at the time that money becomes non-refundable. I know our standard language in our additional clause addendum doesn't say that. There's a few contingencies in there that are not addressed, and there are potential contingencies that are not addressed in that language. And so if you're dealing with that kind of a scenario, please reach out to us as brokers so we can help you make sure that all of those are covered and the intent of your client is protected.
So the first couple of things that pop up to my mind, and you may not even know the answer to question number one. Did the title company, and I know the answer to the question, but I think as agents, we all need to know the answer to the question. One, did the title company receive the loan or the contingency?
Yes, they did.
Okay.
The buyer contingency.
The buyer contingency. Yes. And it's important that we submit all of that stuff.
Correct.
To the title company.
The escrow.
Because it is part of the contract.
To the escrow company.
Okay. So then second, I mean, it didn't sound like that attorney went after our agent.
Nope.
Do we have any liability in this situation?
Well,
I mean, obviously the listing, our seller could go after us.
From the seller, right?
But not any liability from the buyer going after us.
Correct. The buyer was represented by a broker from a cooperating company. So there would be, in my opinion, no exposure from the buyer perspective. Do we have from the seller perspective? One of the questions that's being asked is, what could we have done differently as the representative of that seller to protect their interest? That gives me some heartburn because both the standard ADRE statutes require that we promote and protect our client's best interest. Also, the Code of Ethics requires we protect and promote our client's interest. And if you really want to nitpick at this thing, we probably fell a little bit below what would be expected of a representative because we didn't advise that there are contingencies that in certain circumstances could allow that money to be refundable.
And there was more than just that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is just one that went through the whole process, right?
Well, I'm just saying to that same point, the same language on the same contract. There were other things in that contract, unfulfilled loan contingencies potentially, because there's no language. There's no.
That's in the additional clause.
The additional clause, right?
That language is there.
Yeah. So, I mean, all those different things. But again, people sometimes don't use those. They don't refer back.
And I think one of the takeaways from this is understand what your language is saying.
Absolutely.
And if you look at the language that was put on that page 8, it says buyer's earnest money to be immediately released to seller upon completion of the due diligence. That doesn't mean non-refundable.
Correct.
That just says the seller's going to hold it now.
Yeah.
And the only non-refundable part was on the additional clause addendum, and that didn't address the contingencies out there. So yeah, I mean, and these kind of things, they don't happen very often. But you sit in my seat, you see them more often than you'd like, right? But you as a practitioner sitting out there every day, you don't see these type of things. And so understand that when your things are a little different than what you, or just you want to confirm things, reach out to us because we see them quite often.
Yeah, I take the position when I start to see non-refundable earnest money, whether I'm on the buy side or on the listing side, of there are, in my opinion, and I'm definitely not a broker, there are very, very few incidences, I think, that occur where earnest money truly is non-refundable. There is always a case to be made. And I think, a lot of agents don't understand. Yeah, you can go through the due diligence, you can go through the inspection process, you can go through all that, and then all that buyer needs is a loan denial letter from the lender without that doesn't even have to have an explanation of why
Yep.
they are getting denied. And I explained to all my sellers in those situations, it's going to be very hard to keep that earnest money. Not saying impossible, but I let them know from the beginning, it's going to be very, very difficult. So have a clear explanation with your seller of what earnest money is.
Thank you for having that conversation. And I wish that all of our licensed agents would do that, have that similar conversation when it comes to earnest money. Our contracts are very buyer friendly.
Very.
And for an agent to opine to their client on the listing side that money is going to be forfeited, it's just problematic.
Yeah.
Can it be? Yeah, it can. But it's when you as an agent say you won't have to, that money is going to be forfeited, there are too many arguments to be made.
Let me ask you this. As far as the 3-day, the buyer
notice?
No, the buyer
No.
needs to get 3 days prior to get the CD.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a question I have. So once that CD is issued
mm-hmm.
and buyer has signed it,
mm-hmm.
within those 3 days, or let's say 3 hours prior to, can the lender then issue a loan denial and the buyer can retain the earnest money?
Can they?
Well,
probably.
Okay.
Yeah, they probably can. I can tell you that I have had one case in my career where loan was funded to the escrow company. All parties had signed, just waiting to record, and the lender's underwriting team finally came to the conclusion that the buyer had committed fraud on their application, and they pulled the funding back. So we were this close to recording, and they came to a conclusion so they pulled it back. So yes, things like that happen rarely, but they do happen.
I think Mike and Duane, the best answer for realtors, and I like to look at these things as what I call contract red flags. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're walking through a property on an inspection, you're supposed to, or on a tour, you're supposed to identify red flags. That's a realtor's responsibility. Not know beyond that, but just identify those red flags. Well, if we take that same precaution into the terms and conditions of the contract, and anytime we receive something that says non-refundable, or even the word waive SPDS, waive inspection period, waive appraisal, whatever those things are, those potentially are, could end up in a violation of your fiduciary duty to your client. So the smartest perspective is to say to the consumer, so Duane, in Mike's case, what he just said, you can't interpret the language. You can in your boilerplate to a degree, but if the consumer's concerned with any of these things, the proper answer is always, please contact a real estate attorney to learn what liabilities and responsibilities have changed if you desire to waive that, or if you desire to accept a non-refundable earnest money, because at least at that point you've got you're not playing attorney.
Yeah, and you're actually shifting some of that responsibility and liability away from you and your firm. So,
well, I want to get into, because we only got about 5 minutes left. I do want to get into the FHA mandatory clause,
mm-hmm.
And so because I used to look at it differently, and I got corrected, by my broker. My interpretations was not spot on. So my interpretation was that once you go past, well, first of all, I used to think that, that if they waived earnest money or they made earnest money non-refundable, despite inspection, and we still did the inspection, that earnest money can be lost if we waive our inspection period. But it's where you're not waiving your right to get your earnest money back. Even if you release earnest money and make it non-refundable, the FHA buyer still has to get qualified at the end of the day. And if you go past the inspection period and then day five days prior to close of escrow, that FHA buyer now all of a sudden does not get qualified and gets denied the loan, they're getting that earnest money back.
Correct. Yeah.
Despite whether you say earnest money is non-refundable.
Well,
am I right?
So the FHA and VA mandatory clause deals with appraisal issues only. Okay. And so a VA or an FHA buyer cannot be penalized by forfeiture of earnest money due to a low appraisal.
Okay.
Okay. So can a FHA or VA buyer waive or forfeit earnest money for other reasons in a contract? Sure, they could, but they cannot be penalized by forfeiture for a low appraisal. Okay, so in those cases, if that FHA mandatory clause is not signed until later in the deal, it's still going to be applicable because there's a federal law that revolves around that. So, yeah.
Okay, so I misspoke. So the kind of what the case that I was making was when I was representing buyers, saying, hey, listen, that's okay, make earnest money. And this was years ago, but we can make earnest money go hard, non-refundable, whatever the case is. But at the end of the day, if you get denied the loan, you're going to get your earnest money back, and that's not necessarily 100% the case.
That's
and
correct.
That's where I was in error.
Because it depends on what language you're using for that non-refundable earnest money, and then if you use the standard additional clause addendum, that specifically says that you will not get your money back if you get denied a loan. So, among other things.
All right. So let me throw it.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure people are hearing the word rejected for the loan, denied for the loan. You can be approved for the loan. You can be approved and yet still issue an unfulfilled loan contingency if the loan that you were approved for is different than the loan you told the buyer and seller agreed to on the AAR pre-qual form.
Correct.
And so as a result, you could be approved, but say you wanted to put 5% down, as Matt was talking about earlier, and because of whatever credit reasons you got approved, but with 10% down. That's not the original loan you requested. So you can still, even though you were approved at 10% down, you can still use the unfulfilled loan contingency and get your earnest money back, or potentially get your earnest money back.
And because like I said earlier, the lender does not have to provide the reason why they're issuing. All right. So we got 3 minutes. So this is a situation. All right. So I represent the seller. Okay. We are having insurance issues with the HOA. Everybody's aware of this. Okay. To protect my buyer, even though we knew.
I thought you represented the seller.
I represent the seller. I did represent the seller. Thank you. See, we're both, so I represent the seller in this. But knowing that we're probably not going to get an answer, a resolution from the HOA and the insurance for 2 weeks out, I went ahead, though, and issued the 3-day cure notice just to protect my seller so that at any given time, we can cancel the contract, or we find out verbally that the HOA is not going to be able to take care of the insurance process. We've now got the 3-day cure notice enforced. 3 days have gone. Now, at that point, let's just say hypothetically, we go ahead and cancel because they have not fulfilled, they have not closed within those 3 days. Could we retain the earnest money?
Well, there's a lot of depends in there, but with regard to a breach,
asking for a friend.
I get that. With regard to a breach, if the cure notice was drafted appropriately for what the reason was for the buyer's potential breach,
failure to close
escrow, 3 days elapsed, and the buyer still has not closed, and the seller theirself is not in breach of the contract, then the seller could make a demand for cancellation.
Yeah.
There's another step in there. The seller has to make a demand for the cancellation and forfeiture of earnest money. But there's a lot of what ifs in there.
Yeah, I would say in that situation, I think the buyer can make the case that the
Insurance.
the HOA did not have the right insurance policy
Correct.
in place. So
For their loan.
for their
Yeah.
loan. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Duane, thank you again for stepping in. Good
Well, wait
stuff.
a minute. I got a bunch of more stuff to go here.
I know. That was fun, though.
Okay.
I appreciate you joining us today. We are out of time, but leave you with the quote of the day. Fear kills more dreams than failure will ever will. Appreciate everybody joining us today. Go out and sell a home.